Hey, it's you. I live in a tourist town. This may sound crazy, but I live on an island in Ontario, Canada. It's quite a small island, so you don't have to take a boat to get here. There's just a couple bridges around, but we are technically an island. For this reason, we have a very unique environment here. We have a microclimate, so the weather here is way different than the rest of Ontario. So for instance, on the town just off the island, they may be getting a storm, but we still have perfect clear skies. Or if we're getting a storm here, it's perfectly sunny everywhere else. This is called the lake effect because we live on one of the Great Lakes. Things here are so different. Not to mention that as an island, we have so many beaches, beautiful, beautiful white sand beaches and beautiful clear blue water most of the time on Lake Ontario. You can go pretty much any direction and you will eventually find a beach. This lake effect and this microclimate makes the soil here a lot different than it is throughout the rest of the province. So we have this unique landscape, which is actually ideal for growing grapes. So we have a huge population of vineyards and wineries here, and from that has stemmed a large population of breweries, cideries, distilleries. All forms of alcohol can be found here. And so eventually, with this uptake of wineries and people coming to enjoy the wineries and the beaches, this became a very popular tourist destination. So as a result, countless restaurants, bars, and boutiques have opened here. We've got craft ice cream spots, we have people who make their own clothing, we have 5 or 6 farmers markets, and in the past couple decades, a huge influx of artists of all kinds have moved here. I'm talking musicians, singers, painters. There's a huge community of painters and artists in all forms, pottery makers, clay workers, comedians, writers, anything you can think of. There's a large population of those people here, and there's a great community for it. As a result, this has become one of the biggest tourist destinations in Ontario. With being a tourist town, there are of course a lot of upsides, but there are a lot of downsides and shortcomings. And this is what I wanted to talk about today. It's a topic that's become quite important to me in recent years, and that is the reality of living in a tourist town. I live in a village of 1,700. That is very small. I live in a village. How many people in the big 2025 are still living in villages? I should mention I am not from here originally. I have lived here the past 3 years. So the downsides of living in a tourist town that I'm going to talk about do not apply to me in the same way that it applies to the locals that have lived here forever and ever. And these shortcomings affect them more than they affect me as someone that has moved here to live and work. Just found since living here is such an interesting, almost anthropological fascination of what it is to actually live in a tourist town. The biggest one to me that I have noticed is the housing crisis. As a result of being a town that's almost our entire industry relies on tourism, 40% of available housing in the village I live in are Airbnbs. That means throughout the summer months, they are booked and busy all the time, and then these houses, these apartments, these properties sit empty for almost 8 months of the year. This creates rental scarcity. So for those of us that do live here and are looking for places to live, our options are very limited. I genuinely know of 6, maybe 7 rental properties in this town that are available for people who actually want to live here and not for people who are looking to rent an Airbnb for a week or 2. With rental scarcity, as we all know, this drives prices insanely high. Rents that myself and my friends are paying to live in this village of 1,700 are comparable to the rents that my friends are paying to live in cities like Toronto and Ottawa. I have many friends who I work with who can't afford to live on the island. They're driving half an hour to 40 minutes just to come into work every day, and they would love to live here, but there are such few rental properties that it is so competitive to get in. You basically have to know somebody, and even then, the prices are so absurd, so many people here simply can't afford to live in the village that they work in. In a similar vein, let's talk about tourist prices. Our entire economy comes from about 5 months of the year. That means there are 7 months of the year where we are making very little money and we're not working nearly as much as we do in the summer. Things are priced high to bring in that money during the summer months just so that businesses can afford to survive throughout the winter months when those tourists aren't coming in. Which means that as locals, we are paying tourist prices throughout the entire year. This is everything from restaurants and bars to groceries, local goods, farmers markets. These are priced incredibly high compared to if I drive half an hour out of the island and I go to one of the bigger cities around to get my groceries there, which is often what I have to do. So even though there is a grocery store a 30-second walk from my door, I often have to take a 2-hour trip off the island to get my groceries so that I can reasonably afford them while also paying rent. Even since the 3 years that I have lived here, things that locals and people from the area have always had access to as local spots, such as parks and beaches, now have a charged entry fee so that the money can be used to clean up the spaces that the tourists are using and trashing, which I will get into later. So things that we've always had access to, even me, my first year here 3 years ago, things I've always had access to are now things I have to pay to access. As a result, this often leads to tourists complaining about our prices. I work in a very popular restaurant here. We call it casual fine dining, which is of course an oxymoron, but it is, I think, the only accurate explanation of it. Just about every 6 months since I've been working at this restaurant, our prices have raised. I understand why this happens. With minimum wage increasing and all of the like, I see the reasons that this happens. I get a lot of tables complaining to me about our prices, which results in them tipping lower, which is a bummer because that is pretty well my whole income. And don't get me started on tipping culture. I agree, tipping culture is stupid. I would just rather be paid a normal wage and not have to rely on tips to get by, but that is just simply not the world that we live in right now. This one's just a small one, just kind of interesting. Our cell service, Wi-Fi, and data service is not great. We are a rural community. We don't have the infrastructure to have fiber optic Wi-Fi and cell towers on every corner. I don't know about cell towers. I don't know how often they're supposed to be there, but we simply do not have the infrastructure for that. I cannot tell you how many times a day I get complaints that we don't have good cell service and we don't have data reception. Mind you, when the tourists aren't here, it's perfect. But when the tourists are here, it overwhelms the towers. Nobody gets any service. Circling back to the trashing of our natural beauties here is the mistreatment of the land. Beaches and parks are overcrowded. It is in the peak of summer on a good day difficult to find a spot on the beach or on the park to hang out and sit with your friends. And despite having public bathrooms in all parks and all beaches, for whatever reason, people still pee and poop on our beaches. I cannot, for the life of me, fathom this, but people literally treat our beaches like a litter box. I don't know if this is a city attitude or I don't know what this is, but people feel fine just leaving their trash all over the beach and all over the parks and just expecting that people are going to be around to clean it up. And yes, there are now people around to clean it up, and that is why we have to charge people for entry to these places, because we need to pay people to clean up the messes that people have been leaving. If people had just cleaned up after themselves, we would not be charging entry fees so that we could then pay employees to come in and clean up these natural spaces. If people had just been adults and cleaned up after themselves, this could all have been avoided. Even personally, this mistreatment of the land affects me in a big way. I live very near a bar in town, so my front door is maybe 8 feet away from the front door of the bar, and people treat this like it's a garbage can. I have a beautiful planter out front of my house I put a good amount of time and money into, and people trash it. They throw their cigarettes in there, they ash their cigarettes, and they put them out on my plants, and they also leave all sorts of alcohol bottles and cans just strewn all over my stoop, and I have to clean it up. Adjacent to that is that people just treat our small town like a playground. People are doing things here all the time that they would never do at home. Things such as trashing local people's doorsteps, but also having races down the middle of the road, even though there's traffic coming by. People thinking it's funny to play chicken on our roads, pulling plants out of people's gardens so they can have a pretty flower for the 3 days that they're staying here. It's just not so much seen as a real place that people live, and it's seen as like a fun little playground vacation spot that they are just visiting, and their actions have no consequences in the real world here. Next is the city people attitude. I don't have problems with people that live in cities. I have lived in big cities for many years of my life, but they don't understand that this is a rural and natural country. People complain about pollen in the air. They complain about washed up fish on the beaches. They complain about our data services. They complain about access to luxuries such as cannabis stores and Ubers. We are so small here, A cannabis store is not going to survive in a town of 1,700. You can go to the slightly bigger town 20 minutes away and they have one there. I get complaints all the time to me as a server that we don't have a spot for people to buy or that they can't get an Uber. We don't have people who could even do that job. We have like 3 taxi services. People complain that you have to pay to enter the provincial parks. Of course you have to pay to enter the provincial parks. You've always had to pay to enter the provincial parks. And this is for good reason. We have a very special beach here that has massive, gorgeous sand dunes. And there are specific plants that only grow in the sand dunes. And these are preserved and protected lands. If too many people are there, they're going to destroy the natural environment of the dunes that need to be protected and restored. And this is why they're letting less and less people into the parks every day, because they can't keep an eye on things at all times to make sure that the landscapes that are so special and so unique to here are being respected. Then we have our secret beaches. The secret beaches are special beaches that only the locals know, that only the locals go to, because the public beaches are so overcrowded you cannot get a spot. Just in the past year, there was a business that moved to town that was kind of accepted into the community and told about some of the secret beaches, and they have started offering boat tours to the secret beaches. So tourists will pay them to take them to the secret beaches that only the locals knew about, and now the locations of these secret beaches are just as publicly known as the public beaches, and they are just as overrun and they are just as overcrowded, but now there's nobody there to clean them up because they are not technically a public beach. So these places that we have always gone to have some solitude and some time with our friends are full of trash, huge number of people with loudspeakers getting obliterated drunk, and we are running out of spaces that are left for just us. Additionally, people have started putting locations of the secret beaches in their Airbnb packets, so that more and more tourists are finding out about these spots. We are being run out of the last few spots that we had left. Development. We are being forced to adapt to the number of tourists that are coming in every year, and every year we are getting more and more tourists. This means we are pushing for development to happen quickly, development that we don't have the time, the workers, the money, or the infrastructure to do in a timely, cost-efficient, and non-intrusive way. These are being rushed, and as a result, our taxes are being raised so that we can introduce more infrastructure for the tourists to come in, and the tourists are not paying the taxes on these things that they enjoy, that are really more than anything a nuisance to us that live here. For instance, this past year, in the off-season, we dug up the entire main road that I live on, and it made access to the businesses that are already hardly being visited in the winter almost impossible. We had to build a second water tower, which made our water in the town taste and smell just disgusting for 2 to 3 weeks while they were doing whatever they were doing to get both water towers working. Next is overworked staff and staffing crises. As I said, so many people cannot afford to live here, and so they don't seek work here because it's so much more convenient to not have to drive 30 to 40 minutes to get into work, which means that there are a small number of us here that are working, which means that almost all of us have 2, 3, 4 jobs working in the local establishments. My roommate has like 5 jobs. Almost everyone I work with has at least 2 jobs. And that is because businesses cannot get staff because young people who want to work in these industries cannot afford to live here. This means that everybody is incredibly overworked. We get almost no time off, and in this busy tourist season, every shift is crazy, and every shift is exhausting. So workers are often burning out very early in the season, and then we just have to keep going for the rest of the season because that's just the nature of the game. That's how we survive the rest of the year, is by working non-stop throughout the summer. At my job, time off requests are almost unheard of. You can get a day off. You can maybe get 2 days off. There is no way in hell you are getting 3, 4, 5 days off if you want to do a short trip, if you want to go to a cottage with your friends. It is tiring. This kind of ties in with it is the parking situation in town. There is very little parking here, which is a problem because we have so many people coming in. So we've started to charge. If you park for more than 2 hours on the road, you get a fine. So when staff who do have to drive into work are driving in, if they cannot find a spot in one of the 2 free parking lots, then they have to park on the road, And if they have to park on the road, that means they are getting fined and they're getting charged to park their car so that they can go to work. You see how this is all tying in? The last thing I'm gonna say is the local fetishization. City people find something so fascinating and mind-blowing about people who live in these small towns. They feel very comfortable asking very personal and very invasive questions about your personal life and feel entitled to your answer and kind of get upset if you don't answer them in the way that they want you to. This is very frustrating as a server where my whole job is just to appease you, to make everything good and easy and fun for you. I feel like I have to answer these personal and invasive questions so that I will still get a tip so that I can pay my rent and pay my groceries and still do fun things outside of work, because my whole income relies on you liking me enough that you give me money. It is a broken and flawed system, but it is the reality. I just have to do what they want me to do so that I can get paid for the job that I'm doing, even though my job should not include having to tell you where I live and how much my rent is. There is another phenomenon where men from the city are obsessed with the idea of hooking up with a small town local girl. Like we are some novelty item or souvenir. And of course, this sort of thing happens everywhere. If you are a woman, you encounter this everywhere. It's just such an interesting phenomenon here where they think you're some like country bumpkin who just needs to see like what a city boy can do. I'm getting catcalled on the way home from work. I'm getting people following me to my door. I'm getting people hitting on me while I'm working. It's a bummer, and I don't understand it because we are still just the same for the most part as people you meet in the city. We just live in a small town. But living in a small town is not all bad. Not by a long shot. There are actually so many things I love about living here. There are so many things I love about living in a tourist town. The biggest one being the work bond, the industry bond, the local bond, whatever you want to call it. We are such a tight-knit community here because we have to be. In the 7 months where we are not getting tourists, we rely on each other heavily. We are always going to each other's businesses. We are forever supporting each other in that way. All of my coworkers are my friends. When we are working, we are all working together because we have such a small crew, and it makes every shift fun. Even the ones that are crazy and chaotic and just god-awful, it is still fun because I'm working with my friends and we are in it together. We are always doing things together when we do get time off, even if it's just a couple hours before or after work. We are doing beach days, we are camping, we are doing bonfires, we're getting food, we're getting drinks. If you want to do something, it is easy to get a few people together to do that because most of us do live in town. It kind of feels like summer camp. To live in such a small town, I can walk to all of my friends' front doors. I can just go over unprompted, just knock at the door. We walk to work together, we walk home from work together, and then we work together and we have fun. We can go back into the kitchen and just chop it up a bit. We can complain if we have a table that sucks. There's also the industry bond. It is not competition between businesses because we are in this together. We know that these 5 months are hell. We know that we are all overworked and overtired, and we also know that in the 7 months after this, we have no choice but to rely on each other, and there's a huge closeness in that. I know pretty much everybody that works in every restaurant in town. We give each other special deals on drinks and food for coming into each other's restaurants, and there is such a sigh of relief in going up to a new table and seeing that it's industry people and just knowing you don't have to put on the whole song and dance for them. Sometimes the brewery next door on hot and busy days just drops off a few pizzas for the staff. If I need a sprig of rosemary or a cup of sugar, I know I can just go to my friend's business across the street and she's happy to give it to me. Next, I get to live here. I get to live in this beautiful, nature-filled space year-round. Almost everything I could possibly want is just walks from my door. Are they expensive and are they overcrowded and busy? Yes. But I can go to it absolutely anytime I want. I can go early in the morning when I know it won't be busy. I can go late at night when I know it won't be busy. Plus, I know what few secret spots we have left. I know the best spots. I know where I can get deals. I know where my friends and I can definitely get seats. I know where we can get the cheapest firewood. I know where we can have secret bonfires. With all my friends and all the beaches and all the nature around. Like I said before, it's literally just like summer camp with all your best friends. And sometimes you're getting paid to do it. Next is making people's day. I don't hate tourists. I don't hate tourists at all. I heavily rely on tourists, and I so often am a tourist myself. I travel so much in the off season. I'm a tourist so often in my life. I do not have qualms with tourists as long as they are respectful. I love getting to serve someone an amazing meal, and I love getting to make that experience special and fun for them. I love giving them recommendations for the best restaurants, bars, cideries, parks, breweries, beaches. I love giving people recommendations for the best spots in town and knowing that they are going to enjoy their visit more because I got the chance to do that for them. If you treat the locals well, we will treat you well right back. And lastly, I genuinely love my job. Not only do I work with all of my friends, but I truly love serving. It's like a fun game for my ADHD brain, and I love adapting my personality to each table to give them the best experience. I can read a table so well. I know if they just want me to be in and out, get their order, get them their food, get them whatever they need, and just kind of be in the background. I know if a table wants me to be fun and personable and make jokes and take the piss out of them, that sort of thing. I know what kind of experience people are looking for, usually within the first minute or so of talking at the table. At my restaurant, I get to eat amazing food for a discounted price, and I get to share a post-service drink with my friends, and we can just debrief and talk about all the crazy things that happened. There is no other job like this in the world than working in the service industry in a tourist town. I make more money in our 5-month busy season than any of my friends in traditional jobs make year-round. This is not a brag. I have to work my ass off for it. My hours are insane. I have to put up with a lot of crap from people who are very entitled. But at the end of the day, I cannot genuinely think of another job that I would prefer at this point in my life than this job I have now, and I love it. It affords me so much freedom to know I just have to work almost 24/7 for 5 months, make my bank, and then I have so much freedom the rest of the year. Businesses are more than happy to give you months off. Months. You can take 6 months off in the winter, and businesses are happy for that because that means that they can give the remaining employees they do keep throughout the winter more hours that they are looking for, and I get to F off and go travel the world and go do what I was working so hard throughout the summer to be able to do, and knowing that they will welcome me right back as soon as I land. I love my job, I love my friends, and I love living here. The fact of the matter is that living in a tourist town comes with an abundance of downsides for the land, for the businesses, for the people, and that's just how it is, and it kind of feels like there's no way around it. And I think every year the community is working together to try to find solutions to these problems, and they are trial and error. Not all of them work. Some of them go very poorly. Some of them work exactly how we need them to. It is just the reality of living in a tourist town. Anywhere you live, there are ups and downsides. This is not exclusive to us here. This is just my observations and my experiences of living here. And like I said, I myself am an import, but I love this town, this land, this community so deeply that I do everything in my power that I can to make this a better place for all of us to live. And I think that's what makes this village so special, is that that is the goal of everybody that lives here, whether you've been here your whole life or you are new. Everybody just wants to make this town better, and they want to make sure there's a real community here, because I think so many places are losing community. That used to be so important as a society, and I think a lot of places are losing that, but living here in this sort of environment forces you to have community, and I love that, and I think it's beautiful. This is not to deter anyone from coming here at all. I wish you would come here. It's beautiful. I would love everybody to experience the beauty and the wonder and the great food and the great drinking that exists here. All we ask is that you treat it respectfully, you clean up after yourself, and you just generally don't be an idiot. That's all it takes. Locals don't hate tourists. Locals hate people who don't have any respect. So that's pretty well everything I've got to say about my experience living in a tourist town. Please let me know if you have similar experiences, if you have different experiences, if this changes your takes on going to tourist areas at all. I would really be interested in talking to people about it. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe if it moves ya, and I'll see you in the next one.